Hey guys, thanks for being here. Obviously, excited to get this season started. Our guys have been competing just relentlessly in day-to-day practices, and I just, probably in all my years of coaching, this is probably one of the more competitive camps we've had. Really good depth in a lot of the positions, which breeds competition throughout the entire team. And then just watching the offense compete against the defense and watching them, just continue to grow each and every day has been very, very impressive. They're a group that certainly loves football. They live football. They, love competing on a day-to-day basis, which is the backbone of this entire program. And I'm excited for them to get a chance to do it here, especially some who have not yet seen a home game here. I think it'll be an exciting day for everybody involved. This is a great football team that we're going to welcome here. And obviously we have a history with them. So it'll be game 4. They've been here before. We've been out there once from what I understand. And, they're good. And we just got to make sure that we're buttoned up here and we have everything ready to go, as we enter into this week. Yesterday's practice was really good. Today's their day off. And then we start ripping it again tomorrow.
You mentioned the history between JMU and Weber State, but it is a little bit of a different program than maybe what some JMU fans know about in the past. How has that preparation been when you're looking at everybody that they lost after last year?
Yeah, well, now you also get into, who did they bring in? And when you get into the roster, you're trying to figure out that whole entire combination of people. There's some young guys that didn't play a lot that are really good, including the quarterback. He's only been out there for a couple reps, and I know they brought in another guy. And, the other guy we actually recruited at Holy Cross, and he's a really good quarterback as well. But there's some competition, I imagine, in all of their rooms, and they have some depth, and they do a great job. Coach Mental does a great job offensively with really understanding, taking what he's giving you. So I think you just change the names of the people, and you put them back in there, but they had a great receiver last year. They're going to have another one this year. Their slot is back, who's been really good. Their running back is, 2 of the running backs are back that are very, very good. And then, get out to a couple of the guys in the secondary and on the defensive side, and they got guys. It's not necessarily who, because of the way they play and the way the program works and the way the offense is structured. It's not necessarily the names on the jersey as much as the positions, the field space, the area that you're giving them, the box count, all the things that come with, those high tempo, great offenses that spit the ball over the field. They're doing a really good job of that. So, even though they don't have number 14 back, they do have other guys back there, and they'll show up the same exact way that, every one of those guys showed up for them last year, I would imagine.
How do you make sure that you guys start quickly? Because if you look at it, they're making a long trip, and you could have that as an advantage come the first quarter.
Yeah, well, that's the name of the game, is to start fast and finish strong. We want to do that every single game. So I think it's got to be calculated in our risks that we take. We got to make sure that we, hold on to this football. We don't want to give it back to them too quickly, and we have to eliminate the mistakes that will kill the drives. Obviously, in games, you talk about having, on average 12 drives a game. You can't pollute those with false starts, which we found ourselves in that situation last year, holds, or any of those things that set us back to a 2nd and 15 or a 1st and 15, whatever it might be. And now all of a sudden you're really, swimming upstream. So we got to make sure that we do a good job of staying behind the chain or in front of the chains. We got to do a good job of making sure that, we're doing all the little things right that we focused in all camp long. We talked about our normal things we talk about, but then we also talked about those things that will lose you a football game. So we are hyper aware of the things that win you games and things that lose you games, and we just got to make sure we stay away from those, especially in the early drives. We got to keep this thing together, and we got to move the ball quickly, and then we got to get some stops, and special teams has to be elite. We watched a lot of stuff over the weekend, with mistakes happening in that first game. Hopefully we can learn from those and be ready to go.
I know you mentioned yesterday was a pretty good practice. How prepared do you feel you guys are ready with the game plan this week? Is there anything else you need to see before game day this week?
No, I don't think so. I think we just got to get it repped. They go at a pretty good tempo here, and what they'll look pre-snap and just find that 6th guy into the box. If there's a tight end, the 7th guy into the box, and then everything starts working off of it. They have their pre-snap little gift they like to take off the backside. If you're going to play off, they're going to spit the ball out really quick, and then we just got to make sure we're aware of what we're showing pre-snap, and then how do we change that picture post-snap. So those are the big things. We know what we're doing. We just got to make sure that we're executing it and understanding what we're giving them, on both sides of the ball, because ultimately, they're really aggressive on the defensive side as well. There's a lot of pressures that show up. I don't think they're going to be afraid to fire their bullets here when they show up, and we just got to make sure we're prepared.
You talked a little bit about some guys having their first game day experience here. Can you take us back to last year when there were so many people who had that experience? And is that kind of one of the underrated aspects of being a coach is like you get to witness that for a lot of people, or guys maybe who are seeing or playing in their first college football game or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think we were talking about it yesterday with some of the younger guys that we think might get on the field. I'm just thinking like the moment, here it comes, right? And how prepared are they? And when those lights shine and that band plays and that crowd is excited, there's a lot you could extract from that. And if it doesn't go well, there's a lot that could kind of put some weight on your shoulders. And I think it's important that our guys know they just got to go out and trust and focus on the process as they go through this. But there is true energy and true excitement from this fan base, more so than anywhere else we played last year. And I imagine every team that comes in here will say the same thing. So we need, it's sold out, which is huge. We need everybody involved from the moment that other team runs out on the field that they need to hear it. The minute we do, we need to hear it. And then we need to just make sure that we have the engagement of everybody. But it's ultimately the idea of, in all of that, take a second at the beginning of the game and just admire where you're at and be proud of where you're at, understand how much support you got, but ultimately you got to get to work, right? So all that stuff on the background is nice to have, but ultimately it can't affect what we're about to do on the field. But it is an interesting moment in pregame, especially when you go out there and you could just feel that a little bit differently, and it hits people just a little differently.
Week one, obviously home season opener, kind of a big tone setter for the rest of the season. What, if anything, in particular are you kind of looking to see out of your guys on Saturday, behaviors and tangible-wise, just to kind of set that tone?
Yeah, well, this is the first time we'll play together as this year's team, and we think we know, what it's going to look like. But the minute you get out there and things go your way, how do we look when they don't go your way? How do we look? Those are the moments where you're really going to start to judge who we are as a team, or in those moments where there's some stress involved, there's some pressure applied. Where's their fracture point, like we talk about every year, and where's our fracture point? And just making sure that, we're in a spot where our guys are playing clean football. The moment's not too big for them. They live in the big time every single day we go out there. That's what we try to live in. We compete in everything. We have situational awareness. We're playing the music, the band's out there, for our scrimmage. There's just so many things that we wanted to have lived many times over before we get out there in the game. I just want to see the composure, want to see them, work through the process, and just want to see them execute at an elite level, because they've done that up to this point in time. And, I'm excited for them to get a chance to do it when the scoreboard lights up and the record matters.
Have you made a decision on a starting quarterback?
We have not. Zoe's fully cleared now, which is huge. So that happened last week, which is something that we're excited about. And, he's working through it every single day. And, we got, a lot of football left to play throughout this week. But, I imagine just like everything else, there's competition in all these rooms. I think that there's an opportunity for a lot of guys to see the field, but they're in a good spot.
Obviously, I know he has to be excited about that, but how excited were his teammates to see, him cleared, I guess, and back in action?
Yeah, I mean, he was, walking that line, fine line, pretty close, even when he was in the red jersey, and he knew he could go, and he wanted to go the whole time. And I think everybody's excited to see him back out there, and just know that now we don't have to talk anymore about that, right? That he gets a chance to just go out there and let it fly. Collectively
as a unit, where do you all feel the team has improved the most from the beginning of camp now that you're in game week?
I think, if I just looked at it overall, I think about the things that ailed us a little bit last year, some of the pre-snap stuff. I think the, jumping off sides, our inability to go on two at times, our, softness in the cadence where we couldn't hear it clearly, just certain things that you shouldn't be happening in a way, but ultimately you have to live through to clean up. And I think that's the thing for me that I've seen a ton of improvement in there. We have been really good procedurally. We've been really clean as far as our fundamentals are concerned. And I just want those things that matter the most, right? Being fundamentally sound, schematically competent, situationally aware, and protecting that football, and just playing hard. I just want that all to come out in the wash like we've seen it every single day of camp so far, and I'm sure it will.
What did you learn about this team that maybe you didn't know when camp started?
Well, that they love football. They love competing. They love competing. That's the one thing to me that stands out more than anything else that, I see from this program. As talented as they are, as good as they are, as high level of execution is happening on offense and defense and special teams, they just love competing every single day. And that to me is a good sign, right? That's a sign of some of the best programs I've been around, are that they love competing and they never want that practice to end. And that's basically what we have out there every day.
A lot of times in game one, and this is happening every football game, but you've got to make adjustments. And obviously in game one, you just don't know what you're going to see. Now that you have most of your staff back, a couple of changes on defense, do you feel comfortable with the in-game adjustments and how that went last year and will translate into this year?
Yeah, I do. I think that last year there was moments where, we needed a little more from different guys, whether it be on the field or wherever they might be, that to add something to it. And I think this year, in year 2, it's just a little bit, I don't want to call it easier. It's just that you have familiarity. You know where those chess pieces move. In year 1, there's really 1 or 2 guys that are able to run the show, and there's not a whole lot of others that are able to put a lot of input into it. And I think now, that there's a lot of different guys who understand what's going on and their voices can be heard. And we have a better understanding of the team, right? So when you add all those things together, I think it could lead to some really good things here come Saturday.
Discuss Weber's defense a little bit. What do you see on film from what they've done in the past and what you expect to see?
Yeah, I think they've been the same as what they've been in the past. They'll be in a 3 down, they'll be in a 4 down. They are not afraid to pressure, and they do it a lot of different ways, whether it be corners, nickels, safeties, whatever it might be. And then they're running a bunch of trail blitzes, through the A and B gaps. They have America's blitz coming off the edges. They're just a physical, downhill group that will get aggressive, and I can't imagine why they would not want to be aggressive here. So, in their special teams, they're very good, right? Their kickoff coverage is really good. Their punt coverage is really good. Hit a fake a year ago, right? Like on their punt team. So there's a lot of things in there that you just have to overly be prepared for. But it starts, I think, offensively, the way they move the ball, the things that they do within that offensive system. But then defensively complements that offense as well. They go fast and they have some tempo on offense. But you get over the defensive side and then they play aggressive, especially if they got a score on the board or they did something offensively, that sparked them a little bit. Well, here they come trying to get the ball right back as quickly as possible, and they're not afraid to do it in an aggressive manner. So, we got to be very calculated with the shots that we take. We got to be smart, and we got to feel out that game. What are they like up front? Can we move them? Can we not move them? Are they too aggressive? If they're super aggressive, can we make them pay for that? Those are all the things that we got to be able to dance through as we, enter into this game.
Is the biggest thing with their offense the speed that they go at? Is that what you're most concerned about?
Yeah, and this is going to be a different quarterback. I thought the guy last year was really good, really poised, really confident, stood in there and would pull the ball and spit it out. And if he didn't like what he saw, he'd pull it down and run it himself. I'm sure it will be very, very similar. And again, they have their quarterback that was there last year that played some snaps. And then they have a transfer coming in that's, really highly touted and a really good quarterback as well. So, it'll be an interesting day just to figure out, are they exactly what we think they are? When you run that system, that is your system, so it's just a matter of the pieces within it, how well prepared are they?
You mentioned your special teams, or their special teams. Talk about your special teams. There are a lot of new faces there. Do you like what you've seen throughout fall camp as you get set? Because there were a lot of mistakes in the special teams this past weekend on week 0. I'm sure you don't want that to happen, but
yes.
How do you like your special teams and how they progressed?
Yeah, I thought we'd done a really good job up to this point in time. I think that, we're going through just all of it, every phase of it, and just making sure we've repped everything over and over and over again. But really on special teams, it's going to start with a lot of the fundamentals of everything that also helps us carry over to defense. But I like everything that we're doing right now. I mean, from hands to on sides, we're that deep into everything as you should be at this time of year. But our kick return game, our punt team, the aggressive nature in those, in our punt rush as well. There's a lot of things that I think we're doing a really good job. I don't want to, really speak too much about it, but other than that, I like where we're at.
Coach, this is your sophomore year as a football bowl subdivision coach, and if you go back to last year and this year, what is the excitement level different? How is it different for you, knowing that you've got all these pieces and the depth to work with? Coaching is coaching, certainly, but when you get to this level, it's a higher level, obviously.
Yeah. So the depth pieces we already spoke about, it's nice to have that, right? You don't want to be stuck in a situation where you only have one guy in a room, or 2 guys in a room. And I think that this year we know that that is not the case. That's exciting. I think being out here in your second year through, you'd have a better idea. We sat here last year, but we were going on the road. Then we came back home, and played that game against Gardner-Webb here, and that was my first time and our first time being introduced to Bridgeforth Stadium. I think after that we realized pretty quickly, just what exactly this means to everyone, and just exactly what end of the bargain we have to hold up on our side of it. So I think in year 2 there's more familiarity with our team, with what it's like here on game day, all the positives that come with it. And last year we were just in a spot of many unknowns, so I feel a whole lot better about it, walking in year 2.
As you put this roster together this year, a lot of those FCS players that you brought in are FCS all-stars, if you would, in many regards. But have you seen them elevate their game as they have worked with you over the last several months?
Yeah, I have, certainly have. And I think that that's what they, all we're ultimately hoping for is an opportunity to elevate their game and to do just that. And I think they've done, a really nice job of, they come in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder too. They're excited for what you're giving to them, as opposed to maybe feeling entitled. And, you come down from a higher level and get here, it's probably not going to look exactly the same as it did at USC or UCLA or wherever it might be. So I think anybody coming up here, gets to a point where they're just proud to be part of this. And I think when they get a chance to see it on game day, that'll even ring more true.
Was that a conscious effort to kind of go after high-level
football
FCS
players?
guys?
Yeah.
Well, good
Yeah.
football players
Yeah.
at the FCS level?
It was. Yeah, we were trying to be very conscious about trying to find good football players that played football before, yes. And it's just in our experience, and again, I said it before, but maybe next year it all changes. Maybe teams we're playing have all these 4- and 5-star kids that came down and are lighting it up at many different places throughout the Sun Belt. Well, then maybe our strategy changes a little bit. But what we looked at across the entire Sun Belt and across our team, was really those guys, coming up a level that have really, been the most productive on all the guys that we brought in. And I don't need to name all the names. You have an idea who they are, but I think it holds true as you look at the next level. Guys that have left us and went to Indiana, or guys that have left us and gone other places, did a pretty good job up there as well. So I think that it's a matter of us understanding, where the guys have played meaningful snaps in pressure situations and have delivered, right? Those are important things that you can't put a price tag on. And I think those are important things that when you evaluate, you can't just say, okay, well, he came from Georgia, he must be awesome. He hasn't played in 3 years, but he came from Georgia. I bet he's really good. I bet he is, but is he? And I don't know the answer to that. When you have film of thousands of reps and can see pluses and minuses and understand strengths and weaknesses and football intelligence and overall football IQ and high pressure situation, production, those are all things that you could truly evaluate when you're looking at film from someone who's played a lot of snaps as opposed to someone who hasn't.
You told us when you arrived here that as you moved through the ranks, you always ran your organization, your administration, a level above, so to speak, as you moved on through. Where is this level now from your standpoint? Because the next level is the NFL.
Yeah. Well, I think that, there's a lot of things in there, but when we were at, again, just D3, I wasn't trying to run it like a D3 program. When we got here, we were trying to, again, advance and accelerate everything we did, from strength and conditioning to the technology we used to nutrition to everything that we did, to sports psychology, to adding everything that we possibly can to it. Obviously now in the day and age of revenue share, that advances us a little bit more. There's certainly facilities that, are on the brink of, true conversation here, which also has to advance. There's a lot of things in here that, we got to just keep moving it forward at a high rate of speed. But to me, it was never about, hey, we're just here, at the FCS level or at the FBS level, let's settle there. Our learning and understanding and desire and to know about what happens at the NFL, at other places, and what things are realistic for us to, put into this program so that we could continue to advance it and accelerate it. And that's just what we've always tried to do anywhere we've been.
Going back to Alonzo, when you think back to last winter, was it even fathomable that he might be cleared before even September? And at what point did the reality that he might be cleared at this point kind of become a reality?
Yeah, well, I think the way he went about his every day, made you say if anybody's going to have this be a reality, it's going to be him. I think that he did not miss a single day of his, rehab, his workouts. He was with Tyler constantly. He was fully locked in to making sure he had himself ready to go. And I think that was just a matter of, would I imagine it? I don't know. It was the last play of the game last year in our double or triple overtime, whatever that game was at that point in time. And that's just at the last moment for that to happen, you really do wonder. And here we are in a situation where, he's done everything he possibly could to get himself cleared and, excited that he is.